going to work. Ah, wonderful. I think we are now finally live, Simon. So we were having a very good chat there before that happened. But welcome to everybody that has been able to join us live for this very exciting episode 5 of Quick Step to Happier Customers with myself, Jackie Turner, and my fantastic guest, who I'll introduce more formally in a moment, Simon Chris. But those of you that know me really well will know where the Quick Step to Happier Customers slogan comes from. I don't know, Simon, you've seen some of my crazy dance moves as well. I do call them crazy, and I think use the term dancing very, very loosely.
I think you're very brave.
Brave or mad? The jury's out on that one, I think. But those of you that know me well will know how passionate I am about helping companies deliver service excellence. And so I'm very excited to bring on board with me today Australia's leading voice in AI and CX, Simon Chris. So Simon, would you like to tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your backgrounds?
Sure, I would. And first off, I want to say, Jackie, thank you for having me on the show. This is really, really exciting for me. I do a lot of presentations and webinars. This is my first LinkedIn Live. So I'm really excited for this. Look, in a nutshell, 35 plus years in CX, a lot of time of that abroad. Outside of Australia, worked for some of the biggest brands in the world, ran 15,000 outsourced agents for one of the companies and things like that. So quite a bit in the CX space, but I've leaned in and worked quite heavily in AI for the last few years. And then particularly as generative AI came along, really helping companies understand what they need to do in order to adopt this new technology.
Fantastic. And up until now with the LinkedIn Lives, we've talked, I've certainly talked a lot about, people, behaviors, skills, bringing teams together, because I often talk about that you can't deliver service excellence to customers unless you've got internal service excellence. But a big part of that, anybody working in the contact center world, I'm hoping by now is on board with how AI can help to deliver great service to customers. But we've absolutely got an expert here in Simon in terms of if you've got any questions. It'd be great actually to know who's with us at the moment. So do pop a little hello in the comments just so that I know that you're here. And of course, although I've got some questions lined up for Simon to answer, we welcome your questions. So if there's a burning question that you want to ask, then now is the time to pop it into the chat as we're going through the session. But Simon, and you will know.
I agree with you, by the way, that EX equals CX. If you're treating your employees the right way, they're going to treat the customers the right way. I totally agree with that.
So it's always good to know that my guests are on the same wavelength as myself. So, yep. Okay, so Simon, you will know that I read your article recently. It intrigued me because of the title in terms of it was about being the Carl of AI. Yep. But for those who haven't had the pleasure of reading that article, I would, before I ask the question, I would say to anybody, do check it out. Because it's well worth a read. But what was your key message in that particular article?
Yeah, look, I love to have fun with the titles of my article. I enjoy a bit of writing. I wrote a book. There's the cover of it behind me. I wrote that last year. And I've just been publishing some articles. And the first one was the do-re-mi of generative AI. And then the second one, the one you're referring to, was the Carl of generative AI. And it's based around the main character in the Disney Pixar movie Up. And Carl is the cranky old, grumpy old man that sits on the porch and hates everything about the world and says no to everything. He says no to moving out of his house. He says no to playing with kids. He says no to everything. And a lot of companies that are adopting generative AI, or at least letting their staff use generative AI, are doing it in a way that's similar to Carl. They spend their whole time saying, no, you can't do this and you can't do that, and you can't do the next thing, without actually telling them what they can do with it, how they can use it to be more effective, more efficient, more productive, within controlled rules and guidelines. But I'm just seeing a whole lot of, the generative AI policy is one page and it's a page full of no and don't. And my message is there needs to be a little less Carl and a little more, hey, you can use it safely and this is how you do it.
And I couldn't agree more, which is why, as I say, I commented on your article. And I think I related as well, Simon, to leading by example. I talk often about advisors focusing on what they can do rather than what they can't do when they're speaking to customers. And so, leading by example within the business, within a contact center, senior leaders, when they are putting together those policies, sending that clear message from the top, focus on what you can do, as you said, rather than all the sort of rules that don't do this, don't do that. Because I think if you're doing it, sending that message and leading from the top, then that then drills down to the advisors, and they then talk that same language in terms of what they can do, rather than what the human brain often does, which is focus on, unfortunately, we can't do this.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's a clear message just from an AI perspective, but also, as I say, that drills down through the conversations with customers as well, focusing
Agreed.
on positives, what we can do rather than what we can't.
Yep.
But before I go on, I've just noticed Tom Ricky is with us. I know Tom very well. So happy Friday, he says to us both. So whatever you're up to after this LinkedIn Live, Tom, I hope you're having a fantastic Friday as well. And so some research I've come across recently, and no surprise at all, that around 96% of contact centres are now on board in terms of thinking that AI is an essential in terms of their operation rather than a nice to have. But interestingly, the research I looked at, it was really low figure in terms of around 16%, I think it was, of contact center leaders that were concerned about AI reducing the human touch, which brings me to my next question. In your experience, how can businesses effectively leverage AI to enhance the customer experience, but still maintain that personal touch that many customers desire?
Okay. Wow. This has just turned into a 3-hour discussion. But no, seriously. I mean, the first thing I would want your listeners to understand is that generative AI is a little like teenage romance. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody thinks everybody else is doing it. The reality is hardly anyone's doing it. And those that are probably either doing it wrong or doing it without protection, right? It's just the adoption isn't as high as everyone's making out. But 2024 is going to be that year of adoption. So companies need to be thinking about it. Interestingly, people think AI is about task automation, right? So we don't have to have humans in it. We can fully automate it, blah, blah, blah. Most of the times that is not the case unless it is a very simple, repeatable, low value, transactional type thing. Then you can automate. For most other things, we talk about task augmentation. So the concept of generative AI really is that it does the donkey work. It takes out that 80% of stuff that really isn't productive for us and allows us the time, the space, the capacity to be able to do higher value things. As a great example, a call summarization. So at the end of every call center agents are sitting there banging their head on the desk. typing up, taking 5 or 6 minutes to type up some notes in CRM. They hate it. There is total inconsistency. So agent 1 writes 4 words and agent 2 writes war and peace. And so giving that kind of a job to generative AI is a great use case to start out with, because it takes away a pain point for the agents and a pain point for the organization. So the first way in which you would do it is you would have AI write the summary and still have the agent check it and say, yep, it did get it right. That's what was said. That's what I agreed to. Push it off into CRM. Over time, 6 months or so, once you know that it is consistently getting it right, then you can move it to fully automate that part of the function, and on we go again. Another example would be a chat agent who only has to type the words "no refund," and we use generative AI to dress it up and say, "Dear Jackie, on this occasion, because of the amount of time you've had the product and the warranty was voided and blah, 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 we unfortunately can't process a refund on this occasion." Or, whatever that is. And the agent can then just check that and hit send. So this is about just taking away some of that donkey repetitive work. And that's where call centers should start, not with big customer facing bots that are brand new and they're going to trip over themselves. Working on internal process stuff first.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And when you were describing the agent banging their head, I was that agent. I'm not going to say how many years ago, Simon, for a long time ago.
4 or 5 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, call it that. But yeah, for those that may not know my background, that's where I started, and so certainly honed my skills was working in contact centers. Yeah, as many of us do. And that was one of the key things for me. It's such a stressful, demanding job. You're speaking to customer after customer, but at the same time, I'd have to type up, as you say, the conversation, have the WFM team shouting across to my team leader, "Why is so-and-so still in wrap? There's calls queuing," etc. And that was just a never-ending cycle. So,
Yeah.
for me, and again, it start with the basics and get the basics right, isn't it?
And AI is going to be Beauty and the Beast for call center agents. So it will be a beauty in that it will take away the mundane stuff. It will let them do what they want to do as a human, which is connect and empathize and take the time. In an AI world, AHT becomes a lunatic KPI. I don't like it as a KPI now, but it becomes an even worse KPI in an AI world, because your AHT is actually going to go up. It's not going to go down. So, and what I mean by that is today, 7 out of 10 calls, 8 out of 10 calls are, where are the toilets in Heathrow Airport? Right. And the 2 or 3 calls are those big, meaty, beefy, chunky calls. Right. So if you get to a point where you really are AI forward and you've got a great generative AI chatbot taking those 7 or 8 calls, that means that every agent now is getting 100% of their calls are big, complex, escalated, messy, high emotive load. And so the role for contact center agents is going to change. I think that's also going to impact salaries. And it's going to be, we're going to need AI to watch these calls. And as somebody gets one that's highly emotive, such as, if I don't get my pension payment today, I'm going to jump off a bridge type thing, that AI can intervene and say to that agent, "That was a really heavy call. Do you need a break?" To gather your thoughts. And so people who think that AI is going to make call center agents more efficient are fooling themselves. The agents are actually going to become less efficient because they're going to need more breaks. They're going to need more time to work with their EQ and LQ. Granted, they will get productivity gains because all those simple transactions are taken away, but the call center operator role is going to change.
And I think that's a really interesting and thought-provoking as well point, Simon, because again, in my experience, and I can only hope that this, is getting better, that often agents are expected to take those difficult calls even now. I did back in the day. I remember having a customer who threatened to commit suicide, and I really hadn't had any training to deal with that, but it was very much get back on the phone and take another call. And so I hope, that contact centers are already putting the right support in. So when we get to that point that agents are taking those more difficult conversations more regularly, that the support is already there, rather than waiting for that to happen to put that support in terms of noticing that a team member needs to take a break.
Yeah. So watching AIHT and saying to the agents, "Oh, it's still 3 minutes. Don't go to your break yet." And why weren't you back 30? Why were you back 30 seconds from a break? That is all going to go away, and has to go away in an AI empowered world. So it will be a very, very different model for agents, and you won't necessarily be looking for agents with a super high IQ, because they will have AI there to help them do that. So that's going to cause an impact on induction. Times are going to get shorter, less training, like repetitive classroom style training. It'll be more micro learning modules. But you're going to need to find agents that have a very high EQ and a very high LQ, that learning quotient. You're going to have agents that are happy to take on new things, learn new things, adapt, change. Because while we're adopting AI, guess what? So is the general public. So customers are going to be calling in with a higher level of knowledge, a higher level of experience, and they're going to want answers.
Absolutely. And that's why even now, for a number of years, I've been including emotional intelligence within my customer service courses, because it's such, I think a critical skill. And moving forward, that's going to become even more critical. But I'm going to pause for
And
the moment.
it's one skill that AI doesn't have.
Yeah.
So, AI can feign empathy. You can teach it to say, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that," but it doesn't understand what it's doing. It's just repeating a behavior that it's seen. And that's where the humans are really going to come in. And I can see this comment here from Karen, and she's
I've just popped
absolutely
it on the
right.
screen for you.
Yeah, besides writing that post-call summary, just categorizing the call, because Karen's right, that's been a bugbear for years, right? Agents, do you categorize based on the first question that the customer asked, or what the majority of the conversation was about, or what was the most technically difficult thing? You can have AI do all of that for you in the blink of an eye. So yeah, that is an absolute win.
Yeah, I thought I'd pop that on the screen for you, Simon, because I thought, but this one, not so much a question, but I'm going to show it to you because I'm sure it's going to make you smile.
Oh, I hate the word genius, but I'll take it. I'll accept it.
So we've already sort of started to talk about some potential challenges, but again, are there any more in your experience, common challenges that you think businesses either face currently or will be facing in implementing AI-driven service delivery solutions, Simon? And if so, how can they overcome those obstacles?
Yeah, there's some big challenges, and the first one I want to call out is BPOs. If you have BPOs that are listening to this, their world is being rocked to its core, to the point where I wrote an article, a post about this in LinkedIn just this week. The old models, the pricing models, the operating models are simply not going to work. So, and the point that I make there is that the big challenge is that what people are trying to do is overlay this technology on an existing business process or an existing business model and expect it to just drive out benefits. And it will to a certain degree. But for groups like BPOs, It's going to be more of a business changer. You know, AI isn't shuffling the cards for these guys, it's taking the cards away and giving them a Rubik's Cube. It is literally changing the game. For those that are captive, though, there are still challenges. And one of the biggest challenges is that AI is empirical. And that means you can't read your way through it. You can't study and watch videos through it. You can to a certain degree, you know, like some people write books about it. But you have to get your hands dirty. You have to get in there and play. Now, the problem is most organizations have a very low tolerance for failure, right? If you look at SpaceX, the rocket took off, it got 4 minutes into flight, it exploded, and everybody in the company cheered at that failure because they'd learned so much. But most organizations are not like that. They don't tolerate failure well. And so if you're dealing with a very smart technology that has to be used empirically, in other words, you've got to get in there and try it, you are going to get failure. And until these organizations become a little bit failure tolerant, they're going to struggle with the implementation of AI. It's going to be a longer, slower path than organizations. So I've worked with a couple where they've set up an innovation cell, for want of a better term. So and this was within a big call center, they went around the call center and asked who's really interested in AI. And there was 5 or 6 people that put their hand up. So they pulled them out of their current job, got them into a little cell that reported directly to the director for customer experience. And they were tasked with going off and playing with AI, working some use cases, doing some proof of concepts, things like that, so that the whole organization could move. And when those guys tripped over and failed and they built a bot that told a customer to sod off or whatever, it was okay because they were there to fail. They were there to learn through that failure. So unless organizations are willing to tolerate a little bit of risk and a little bit of failure, they're going to struggle a bit.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And that leads me, I'm going to actually pop it onto the screen for you because there's a question that's come through. So there's a misperception that AI is plug and play, and it's not. What recommendations do you have, Simon, for BPOs to put a toe in the water with AI, as they say?
They're going to struggle to put a toe in the water. They're going to have to put the whole foot in the water. For BPOs in particular, they need to be on this. You know, I said to a group of BPOs just recently, the good news is you've got 18 months to adopt this. The bad news is you're 12 months into that 18 months. So BPOs need to be doing something today. It doesn't matter how simple and how basic. You know, a lot of BPOs have big staffing numbers, 500,000 staff. Invariably, that's a HR nightmare. So what about as an idea, you get all of your HR policies, procedures, manuals, and put them into a chatbot so that staff can start using that to answer questions about HR. Or take some of this unstructured data around the organization. Most organizations have structured and unstructured data. So structured data is the stuff that lives in a CRM system, in your phone system, in a knowledge management system. But then there's a whole pile of unstructured data, Confluence, SharePoint, PDF documents hidden in folders. It's that stuff that's absolute gold for AI, right? And it's not plug and play. You have to think about what is the best use case to start with, and don't try and conquer the world in one day. Just what is the best use case? And the best use case is not always obvious, and the most obvious is not always the best. So you really need to dig in and find out what's a great use case that you can get at with relative ease that'll solve a pain point. And that's a great place to start. That probably is the toe in the water, so to speak.
That's a great answer and a great tip there. I don't have your name, sorry, you just popped up as LinkedIn user, but I hope that's answered your question. But do let us know if you found that useful. So, you know, it's quite right. We talk about some of the business challenges when it comes to AI, But let's, tip the balance a little bit now and talk more positively. What are those successes that you've seen? Because I know you're a globetrotter, Simon, and I know you that you've worked with many different companies and clients. But what are some of the key successes that you've seen in terms of AI implementation?
Look, one of the key successes that I wasn't a part of, but I want to call it out, it was a study that was done last year of 5,000 chat agents. So, this was a significant study, and it was for a tech help center. And they compared over 12 months agents that never used AI to support them, agents that didn't use AI for 6 months, but they did in the second 6 months, and those who got AI from day one. And in every measure that you can think of, the agents with AI were outstripping. Shorter AHT, higher resolution rates, higher CSAT, more cases per hour, whatever measure you want to use, they killed it on all of them. And that's pretty telling that it can do that. I mean, that was essentially just a co-pilot. So imagine taking your whole knowledge management system and adding a generative UI interface to the front of it. So I can ask it a question and immediately ask a follow-up question and another question and another on top of that. And a great example that I had with an insurance company was the agent would ask something like, how do I add somebody to a policy? And generative AI came back and said, are you talking about an insured party or a beneficiary? And he said, oh, a beneficiary. And AI said, is the beneficiary over 18? Yes. Oh, well, then you do this, 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 and this. So it guided them down the path through a conversation like you and I would have, Jackie, rather than he asked the question, how do I add somebody, and got a list of 7 PDFs to go and look through while he tries to keep the customer on the line going, how's the weather? And trying to find, can I just put you on hold? AI will be the death of hold time, I'm hoping.
That is music to everyone's ears.
Yeah, so I've seen wins like that. I've also seen the smallest little things. One was a finance group that they just had the worst finance system in the world. I think they'd had it for 100 years. They didn't even have a manual for it. All they had was some e-learning modules. So we actually pulled those e-learning modules out of SCORM documents, put a bot in front of it, and now people could just say to it, how do I raise a purchase order? Oh, well, you do this and this and this. And how do I do this? And what about this? And obtuse questions. What if I have to raise a purchase order for a company that used to supply to us, but they've now been deactivated? And generative AI could understand that and say, well, the first step is you've got to reactivate them, and here's how you do it. So there's been a number of great little success, and most of the success stories are great little success stories because usage begets usage, right? So if you've ever used ChatGPT, and I'm sure you have, Jackie, you use it for one thing. Suddenly you can think of 3 things you could do with it, and then 5 things you could do with it. And it's the same in the enterprise space. And in fact, I always encourage execs, especially senior execs, to start their personal AI journey, because that will then lead them into their enterprise AI journey.
And some really, really good positive successes there, I think, for any skeptics, if there are any, and I'm sure there are.
Oh, yeah, there are.
But hopefully you've just got them thinking a little bit more positively. And when you were talking about AI and have I used it, that's just made me think, I wonder what an AI customer service dancing queen video might look like.
Oh, that would be I could put that on Runway and find out. Or Sora and find out. That'd be interesting. Look, if people haven't started their AI journey at home, their personal AI journey, I want to give you a killer use case. Anyone that has kids, grandkids, nieces, nephews, get into ChatGPT or Perplexity or Hugging Face or whatever tool it is you use, and ask it to write a 1,500 word or 1,000 word, whatever, children's story with a happy ending that features this child. Insert child name, child age, blah, blah, blah. Include their pet, their favorite toy, their brother and sister, whatever, and make that pet or the toy a wise, trusted advisor. Set the story at the beach or at the forest or in the play park, wherever it is that they like most. And then the little twist is ask the generative AI to weave into the story the life lesson that talking to strangers is not wise. And now you have a personalized story for your child where they are the star of the story and they learn something on the way through. And I guarantee, because I've done this with my grandchildren, I have 8 of them, and I've done this with my grandchildren. As soon as you finish generating that story and reading it, it's generate another one, generate another one. I want this one to have unicorns. This one's got to have camels. And generative AI can just do that over and over and over again.
I am absolutely loving that idea, and I'm sure the audience is as well. If anybody does this at home, share the story with me. I'd love to actually read it.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
I actually, with my teenage grandchildren, when they come over, I get them working with the generative AI that generates images, so Midjourney or DALL-E, and I ask them to generate the whatever image they want, and invariably for the boys, it's fighting robot war thing, whatever. And they get an image and I go, is that what you wanted? And they say, well, no. I say, all right, so what else do you need to add to get the image you want? And what else do you need to tweak to get there? And what I'm actually teaching them is how to articulate what they're trying to do into words. Because invariably they try their first image with like 4 words. By the end of it, they're writing 30 or 40 words to get exactly the image they want. And it's just trying to teach them to articulate themselves.
Yeah, what a fantastic way for children to learn. And as you say, just develop their communication skills as well. Absolutely love it. I mean, there is another question that I really want to get it. If you're happy to stick around, because I know it's a Friday evening for you, Simon, but if you're happy for this to go on another 5 minutes or so.
I've got my tea. I'm good to go.
Yeah, I have as well. And this is just such a fascinating subject. Now, I talk often about companies that want to stand out above their competitors. It's not just about delivering on what a customer needs and wants now. It's actually about proactive customer service. And so what I'd like, I guess, and hopefully the audience will be interested in as well, is how you see the role of AI playing in terms of predicting and proactively addressing customer needs before they arise.
It's absolutely a use case. I don't know of anybody that's doing it yet. And part of the reason for that is for AI to do its job, it needs to have a ton of examples of what it's supposed to do. And most organizations haven't structured their data such that they can give AI enough examples. Now, as we start getting AI to summarize calls in a specific way, we can ask it to also track A, B, C, D, and E, and then use that as intelligence to start to predict things like channel of choice or propensity to call, propensity to chat. Does this customer always call us 3 days after the billing cycle and then follow up with an email? Those types of things, in much the same way as we can use it to predict churn in customers and attrition in agents. There's an AI tool now that will help you predict attrition in your agents. We can use those models to try and predict, but we have to have the indicators and we have to have the data to do it. And that's where it's kind of that use case, that's where it's kind of falling apart right now. But it is absolutely the use case to be.
Yeah, and certainly an exciting, I think, way in how to use AI in the future. I'm
Yeah,
just
and then look, it'll drive a whole pile of outcomes. Is a middle-aged male more likely to purchase from another middle-aged male or from a 20-something female? Well, let's look at their purchase history. Who did they talk to? When did they buy? All of those types of things. It'll start to break stereotypes, because traditionally what we've done in customer experience is created homogenous groups of customers and said, well, you're kind of like a this customer. You're an explorer. You're an advisor. You're a this. In the future, we won't be doing that. Every single thing will be personalized and tailored to you. The phrase mass personalization has been around for 30 years. Marketers have been talking about it. It's only now that we can truly deliver personalization at mass scale.
And I've just popped this particular thought up on the screen, again from our LinkedIn user. So I suggest starting with perplexity. It's redefining how we search for information. Start doing your searches and inquiries here to get more comfortable with AI interaction. I'm sure you'd agree with that, Simon.
That is the best comment. I use Perplexity more than I use Google. And the reason is when I do a Google search, it comes back with 10, 12 pages. I've got to click into each page, validate it, look at it, read it. Is that what I want to blah, blah, blah. Perplexity does all that for me. And it just gives me the answer. Now, often when I prompt it, when I ask it, and in my special instructions, I've told it, if you're citing anything, I want the reference. Give me the reference that you got. Where did you get this from? Because if it got the information from Wikipedia, then it's probably a bit questionable. But if it got the information from a government document, then that's very different. And so, because of hallucination, you always want to make sure that generative AI is giving you the right things. But if you do it the right way, yeah, absolutely, you'll save a ton of time using Perplexity over using Google.
Oh, so thank you, LinkedIn user, for sharing that suggestion there. We will need to bring it to a close, I think, sadly, Simon. But before we do, what if you were going to give 2 or 3 takeaways from today's LinkedIn Live session that would have the biggest impact on any business leaders that are listening to this right now, or listen to the recording later? What would those 2 or 3 takeaways, really important things that they can put into place or start thinking about?
Okay, number one, and a couple of these I've covered already. Number one, AI is empirical. Do not forget that. So yes, you can read a book. Yes, you can look at things online. But the best way to learn is go and play. Go and explore. Go and try. Get in there and just play with it. The second one would be start your personal journey, because that will lead you to your organizational journey. It's very hard to talk about AI use cases at work if you don't understand or comprehend what AI is capable of, and you're only going to find that out in your personal life. I gave you the example of kids' stories. You could also use it to give AI the 5 or 6 ingredients that are in your fridge, and it'll give you a recipe. You can ask it to help you draft the speech for your friend's 50th birthday. You can use it for a pile of things. So I would do that. The third one is more kind of in the corporate space, which is look around before you move. And what I mean by that is, if you've got a contact center and you've already got a major platform in that contact center, it might be NICE, it might be Verint, it might be Genesis, it might be 5x, whoever it is. Before you run off and buy a shiny new object, have a look to see if your current vendor provides AI, and if they do, what are they providing? Now, if they're not providing it, okay, then go and look externally. Or if what you want isn't in their short-term roadmap, then go and look externally. But otherwise, you're probably better off leveraging the core that you have, because those systems have been tracking data for you since day one. And if you've had your CCaaS platform, your contact center tech in place for 10 years, you've got 10 years worth of super rich data to give to AI. So that would be my third bit of advice.
3 absolutely fantastic pieces of advice there. And I was just thinking when you gave the example of what's in the fridge, I really should have thought of that last night when I was staring in the fridge and thinking, what on earth am I going
Yeah, it's a great thing to do.
Listen, Simon, this has been such a fascinating session, and I could go on asking question after question after question, but I am so honoured that you've given, as I say, some of your time on a Friday evening. It's 10:40 here in the morning in the UK.
It's 9:40 p.m. here. Yeah.
We both shared before the session as well that we're both drinking chamomile tea at the moment, but I'm sure you'll have, because I know you're a bit of a wine connoisseur as well, so I'm sure you'll be grabbing a glass of wine. But
I will.
before we go, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, Simon, what's the best way to do that?
Simplest way is connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll always accept a new connection. That's where I publish most of my content, articles, random thoughts. Absolutely, actually, if you connect with me and ask really nice, I'll even send you a soft copy of the book that I wrote, the AI Empowered Experience. I'm happy to send that through to people.
Oh, fantastic. And I'm going to end on, I can't beat that comment.
I do like the idea. I don't think my wife would like the idea, but I like it.
But look, the comments are flooding through, so they're all very positive in terms of loving what you've had to say today, Simon. And I guess it's just for me to say thank you ever so much.
No problem.
Enjoy the rest of your evening and your weekend. And for those of you that want to join me again in a couple of weeks' time, I'll be flying solo. My next LinkedIn Live is just myself, but I will be talking about internal service excellence and how to achieve that in order to deliver external service excellence. But thank you ever so much, Simon. It's been an absolute blast.
It sure has. I love it. Great to catch up, Jackie.
Okay, so I'm going to end the session now, but thanks to everybody that's joined us. And if you're watching this on recording, then do let us know. Pop some feedback in the post that I'll share later.